Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. It feels like we're just constantly swimming in information these days, doesn't it?
It really does. Headlines just flash past, and it's tough to get a real handle on what's actually going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. You get the what, maybe, but figuring out the why or, the so what, that's the real challenge. It's easy to feel like you're missing the bigger picture.
And that's precisely what we try to do here at the Deep Dive. We take basically a whole stack of source material, articles, research, even our own notes, and we dive deep.
The goal being.
The goal is to pull out those really crucial bits of knowledge, the insights you might miss, to give you, the listener, a genuine shortcut to being properly informed.
So not just repeating the news, but unpacking it.
Exactly. Unpacking it, looking at the implications, connecting the dots between things that might seem unrelated, and just helping you see those larger forces at play.
Okay, and today's deep dive. We're jumping headfirst into the top headlines coming out of India for June 18th, 2025.
And it's quite a mix, isn't it? We've got everything from high-stakes cricket controversies.
Always a good one in India.
Absolutely. To delicate international diplomacy, major domestic policy shifts, social issues, even a look at ancient traditions making a global impact. It's a real snapshot of a dynamic nation.
So the promise to you, our listener, is that by the end of this, you won't just know what happened.
Right. You'll get the context, the why it matters, the surprising details maybe, and hopefully walk away with a much more well-rounded perspective on India today. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it, starting, as you mentioned, in the sports arena. And yeah, cricket in India, it's more than a sport. It's almost a religion. And we're kicking off with some pretty provocative comments.
We really are. This involves Graeme Swann, the former England spinner. His comments on Sky Sports have definitely stirred the pot ahead of the India versus England Test series.
Which starts soon, right? June 20th in Leeds.
That's the one. And Swann, well, he didn't just offer a prediction. He basically threw down a gauntlet, calling the whole series merely a warm-up for the Ashes.
Ouch. Merely a warm-up. It's bound to ruffle some feathers. Did he elaborate?
Oh, he did. He predicted a pretty convincing win for England, something like 4-1 or maybe 3-2. And his reasoning, he pointed directly at India's squad, specifically the absence of Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma.
Two absolute giants of the game.
Huge names. Swann seems to think that without them, India's batting is weakened and England's bowlers, playing in home conditions, will just, dominate before they face Australia.
Okay, so this immediately brings up the reaction, right? How did fans take it?
Predictably, not well. It sparked quite a bit of outrage, actually. You saw criticism from both Indian and some English fans calling the comments disrespectful, arrogant.
So it wasn't just seen as banter.
Not entirely. Social media lit up with people expressing frustration, feeling his tone was just plain dismissive of the Indian team. And it touches on something interesting, the psychology of these pre-series comments.
The mind games.
Exactly. Are they genuine thoughts? Or is it like an intentional tactic to unsettle the opposition, maybe build up his own side? It's hard to say for sure.
But the idea of respect in sports is huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for fans. Calling a major test series against India a warm-up feels like it crosses a line for many.
It does, because it implies India isn't a serious competitor in this context. And that narrative clashes with the reality of India's current squad. Yes, Kohli and Sharma are out, but they still have what's described as a strong mix of youth and experience.
Under new leadership, too, right?
Sure.
Shubman Gill is captain, Rishabh Pant is vice captain. That's a dynamic pairing.
Very dynamic. And this counters Swann's implication of weakness. Plus, you have to look at England's side of the equation. They're still finding their feet after losing Stuart Broad and James Anderson.
Legends. Replacing them is a massive task.
Huge. They're relying on newer seamers now.
Yeah.
And while their baseball style, that really aggressive approach, has been exciting to watch...
It hasn't always delivered consistently, has it?
Well, their World Test Championship finish, 5th place, does raise questions about how consistently it works against the very top teams, especially over a long series.
So you've got Swann making these bold claims, but England themselves are maybe not as settled as those comments suggest. How might this play out strategically for India?
You'd think it adds fuel to the fire, wouldn't you? It could galvanize the Indian team, give them extra motivation for what's already a highly anticipated showdown.
And it's a significant series for India anyway, beyond just bragging rights. They haven't won a test series in England since 2007.
A long time. So the strategic importance is massive. Plus, think about the pressure now on England. After predictions like that, especially with a team in transition, they really have to deliver.
It sets the stage beautifully. And you mentioned the World Test Championship.
Yes, this is crucial. This series marks the start of India's 2025-27 WTC cycle. So performing well here isn't just about this series, it sets the tone for their entire campaign to reach the final again.
So every single match, every session almost, carries huge weight. It shows how even off-the-cuff remarks can have these ripple effects in high-stakes sports.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. Even if you're not a diehard cricket fan, you can appreciate the drama, the psychology, the pressure.
Definitely. Now, staying with cricket strategy, let's shift from Swan's comments to how India might actually line up. We've got insights from former head coach Ravi Shastri on his preferred playing Yakela.
Yes, Shastri's choices offer a really interesting window into the kind of tactical thinking that goes into selecting a test team, especially for challenging overseas conditions like England.
So what's his dream XI looking like for that first test in Leeds?
Well, for the opening pair, he's gone with Yashasvi Jaiswal alongside KL Rahul, and he specifically mentions Rahul as the most experienced batter in English conditions.
Experience counts for a lot there with the moving ball.
Immensely. It shows a clear preference for someone who's proven they can handle those specific challenges. Then, at number 3, a crucial spot, he suggests a debut for a young left-hander, Sai Sudharshan.
A debut in England. That's bold.
It is, but it's backed by Sudharshan's impressive domestic and IPL performances. It shows a willingness to trust form and potential, even on a big stage.
And this ties into the batting order shuffle because of Kohli's retirement, right?
Yeah,
Gill moves down.
exactly. Shubman Gill, the new captain, is expected to slot in at number 4, moving from his previous number 3 spot. That's a significant change, Gill anchoring the middle order now.
And at number 5, anyone surprising?
Quite surprising, actually. Karun Nair. He's back in the squad discussion after 8 years out. Shastri highlights his consistency in first-class cricket.
Wow, 8 years. That speaks to the depth of Indian cricket, but also maybe rewarding perseverance in domestic games.
It does. It suggests the selectors, or at least Shastri, value sustained domestic form. Then, at number 6, it's Rishabh Pant, the vice-captain and wicket-keeper, a key player.
An explosive player who can change a game quickly. What about the all-rounder role at 7? Always vital in England.
Absolutely critical. Shastri favors Ravinder Jadeja, the experienced campaigner, but he acknowledges it's a tough choice, mentioning Shardul Thakur and another interesting name, Nitish Reddy.
Reddy? What's the thinking there?
The key factor for Reddy, Shastri says, is if he can reliably contribute 12-14 overs along with his batting. This underlines just how valuable a genuine multi-skilled player is, offering flexibility with the ball.
Right, essentially a fifth bowler who can also score runs. And the main bowlers.
He leans towards a three-pronged pace attack. Jasprit Bumrah, obviously, Mohammad Siraj, and Prasidh Krishna, standard firepower.
But England, especially Leeds, can be tricky.
Yeah.
Any contingency.
Yes, and this shows the level of detail. Shastri notes that if it's overcast in Leeds, which it often can be, meaning more swing, then maybe Arshdeep Singh, another left-arm seamer, might get the nod over Krishna.
Tailoring the attack specifically to the expected conditions on the day, that's real tactical depth.
It absolutely is. It's about maximizing your chances based on the environment.
So when you look at this proposed XI, Shastri's XI, how does it stack up? Especially with Swan's comments hanging in the air and the WTC cycle just beginning.
Well, it looks like a team designed to compete. It blends that experience, Rahul, Jadeja, Bumrah, with exciting youth, Jaiswal, potentially Sudharshan. It seems built to counter the specific challenges of English conditions.
And the pressure.
The pressure will be immense, no doubt, but having a clear strategy like the one Shastri outlines can provide focus. It's not just about winning the series, though that's paramount. It's about starting this new WTC cycle strongly.
It really gives you, as a listener, a much deeper appreciation for the chess game involved in team selection, doesn't it? Every single choice is way debated.
Definitely. It's far more complex than just picking the 11 best players on paper. It's about balance, conditions, strategy, and even psychology.
Okay, let's shift gears dramatically now, from the cricket pitch to the often much more complex arena of the global stage. Diplomacy, rising tensions, and citizen safety are next up.
Indeed. And we start with a really significant development involving Canada and India attempting to navigate some very rough waters in their relationship.
This sounds important. What's the latest?
Well, the big news is the first bilateral talks between the new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They met on June 17th during the G7 summit hosted in Alberta, Canada.
First talks between them, what was the aim?
The stated goal was, quite simply, to reset relations. And that's needed because the last 2 years have been, let's say, exceptionally turbulent.
That turbulence stems from the Niger case, right? The accusation by former PM Trudeau.
Precisely. You'll recall Justin Trudeau publicly accused India of being involved in the 2023 killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh separatist leader on Canadian soil. A very serious allegation.
Which India strongly denied.
Vehemently denied it, yes. And India, in turn, criticized Canada for what it views as harboring Sikh separatists who advocate for Khalistan. So the relationship really soured dramatically. Diplomatic expulsions followed.
So how did this first meeting go? Any signs of a thaw?
The official statements emphasize things like mutual respect, the rule of law, and sovereignty. Standard diplomatic language, but important signals nonetheless. And a concrete step was agreeing to appoint new envoys.
Replacing the ones who were withdrawn or expelled earlier.
Exactly. It's a tangible move towards normalization, even if largely symbolic at this stage. The G7 setting itself was significant, allowing this crucial discussion away from the more intense spotlight of a formal state visit.
But why now? Why did Carney invite Modi to the G7, given the recent history?
Carney's stated rationale was India's significance in global supply chains. It points to the pragmatic, economic, and geopolitical realities that often drive these decisions, even when political relationships are strained.
But the underlying issues haven't vanished, have they? What about the reaction in Canada?
No, the friction is definitely still there. Canada's large Sikh community protested Modi's visit quite visibly. They demanded conditions be attached to any normalization. There were even incidents in Calgary where demonstrators tore Indian flags.
That shows the depth of feeling. And the legal case is ongoing.
Yes, and this is crucial. Canada expelled 6 Indian diplomats back in 2024 related to the case. And significantly, 4 individuals have now been formally charged with Nijjar's murder in Canada. The legal process is active.
So how do you balance trying to reset relations geopolitically with these domestic pressures and an active murder investigation involving allegations against another state?
That's the incredibly delicate dance of modern diplomacy. You have these powerful domestic constituencies, the ongoing legal proceedings, but also the economic imperative.
It's like trade and immigration.
Exactly. India is still Canada's biggest source of temporary foreign workers and international students, a huge economic link. And Canadian agriculture, things like lentils, sees India as a massive potential export market.
So Modi visited Canada for the first time in a decade for this. What was his message?
His statement focused on shared democratic values, freedom, and the rule of law, aiming to find common ground despite the deep disagreements. It's a calculated effort to navigate the tensions.
But the big question hangs in the air, doesn't it? Can you truly reset a relationship when these fundamental accusations and legal processes are still playing out?
It's highly debatable. Appointing envoys is a step. But the shadow of the Nijjar killing and the ongoing investigation looms large. How public sentiment and these protests will shape the next steps remains to be seen.
It really underscores how global politics involves so much more than just leaders meeting. It's history, law, economics, diaspora communities, all tangled together.
A very complex web indeed. And speaking of complexity and high stakes, let's move to the Middle East, where tensions between the U.S., Israel, and Iran are reaching a, frankly, alarming level.
This sounds serious. What's happening?
The U.S. is actively deploying additional fighter jets to the region West Asia, specifically because of escalating tensions between Israel and Iran. Things seem to be moving beyond rhetoric.
Additional jets. Is there talk of direct U.S. action?
Yes, and this is the really critical part. Reports suggest U.S. President Donald Trump is seriously considering ordering strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities. Specifically, the Fordo underground uranium enrichment site is mentioned.
Fordo, that's a heavily fortified site, isn't it?
Yeah.
Striking that would be a major escalation.
A massive escalation. The seriousness is underlined by the fact that Trump actually cut short his trip to the G7 summit in Canada, where we just were, discussing India to return to Washington and meet with his national security team in the Situation Room, specifically about Iran.
So this is clearly top priority. What's Trump's stated goal here?
He's quoted as seeking a real end, his words, to both the ongoing regional conflict and, crucially, Iran's nuclear ambitions. He's apparently dismissing calls for a ceasefire as insufficient.
And the justification?
The administration line is that any action will be based purely on American security interests. Senator J.D. Vance, known to be close to Trump, confirmed that while diplomacy is preferred, military options remain under consideration.
So the threat is credible. What about Trump's public statements? He often uses social media.
He has. Recent posts on Truth Social have emphasized U.S. air superiority over Iran, a clear signal of capability. And reportedly, a direct warning was issued to Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei about potential targeting.
And how is Iran responding to all this?
Iran hasn't been passive. They've launched their own missile strikes against Israeli air bases, claiming those bases were used in prior attacks against Iranian interests.
So tit-for-tat strikes are already happening.
It appears so. And chillingly, Iranian officials have reportedly urged residents in major Israeli cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv to evacuate, suggesting they anticipate further, possibly larger-scale Israeli responses, or perhaps are planning further actions themselves.
Wow, that's incredibly worrying. It sounds like a dangerous cycle of escalation.
It really does. This constant back and forth, retaliatory strikes, counterstrikes, it walks a very fine line between contained conflict and a much wider regional war. The potential for miscalculation is enormous.
And the strategic implications of targeting a site like Fordo.
It sends an incredibly strong message, but the potential blowback is huge. It could unify hardliners in Iran, accelerate their nuclear program, and potentially draw the U.S. much deeper into another major Middle East conflict.
What are the red lines here? It feels like they're getting very close.
That's the terrifying caution, isn't it? And the potential impact on global energy markets, international alliances, it's all interconnected. It's a stark reminder of how fragile global security can be.
Amidst this high-level tension, there are ordinary people caught in the middle. How are other countries, like India, responding to protect their citizens in the region?
That's a crucial and immediate concern. India, for instance, has taken very specific steps to help its citizens currently in Israel, given the escalating situation.
What kind of steps?
They've issued a new advisory just on June 17th, urging Indian nationals in Israel who wish to leave to use land routes, specifically going via Egypt or Jordan.
Land routes. Why not fly?
Because the airspace over Israel remains closed or severely restricted due to the ongoing hostilities with Iran, flying out isn't really a viable option right now.
So the embassy in Tel Aviv is guiding them on how to lease overland.
Exactly. The advisory gives specific instructions. Verify the operating schedules for border crossings, which can be unpredictable, and crucially, make sure they have the necessary visas for Egypt or Jordan before they travel.
That sounds incredibly complicated logistically, trying to leave a conflict zone overland.
It is immensely complicated and stressful for the people involved. This advisory comes as these missile exchanges between Israel and Iran have been ongoing for 5 straight days, really fueling fears of a bigger war.
Has the embassy given other advice too?
Yes. They've reiterated previous safety guidance, urging Indians still in Israel to stay vigilant, pay close attention to local security instructions, know where shelters are, things like that. Basic safety protocols in a volatile situation.
It really highlights the vital role embassies play in these crises, doesn't it? The direct line of support and information.
Absolutely critical. And it also shines a light on the significant Indian population in Israel, over 32,000 people.
That many. What kind of work are they doing there?
A lot are involved in caregiving and construction. And interestingly, there's been an influx of Indian workers in these sectors in recent months.
An influx? Why now, given the tensions?
The sources indicate it's due to a decrease in Palestinian laborers being able to work in Israel because of the conflict and security measures. So Indian workers have been filling that gap.
That adds another layer of complexity. People who recently arrived, perhaps for economic reasons, now finding themselves needing to potentially evacuate.
Precisely. It's not just about the logistics of getting people out, it's about their livelihoods, the families relying on them back home. This proactive advisory from India suggests they view the situation as potentially worsening.
Could this whole situation also impact labor migration patterns long term?
It's definitely possible. If the conflict disrupts these flows significantly, it could have wider economic consequences for both Israel and the workers' home countries. It brings the abstract geopolitical conflict right down to the individual human level.
Okay, let's pivot now from these intense international situations back to developments within India itself. We're looking at national policy, the economy, and social issues. First up, an environmental story from Kerala.
Yes, a positive development on the environmental front. The Kerala High Court has taken a significant step by banning single-use plastics in several popular tourist destinations.
Which areas are we talking about?
10 key hilly tourist spots, including really well-known places like Munnar, Thekady, Vagamon, and Sultan Bathery. These are ecologically sensitive areas that attract a lot of visitors.
And what exactly is banned? Is it a total plastic ban?
Not quite total, but quite comprehensive for single-use items. The ban covers plastic water bottles under 5 liters, straws, plates, cups, and plastic cutlery.
Under 5 liters, so larger bottles are okay.
Yes, there are specific exemptions for 5-liter water bottles and also for 2-liter soft drink bottles. This suggests a pragmatic approach, perhaps targeting the most common, easily discarded items while allowing for bulk purchases.
Is the ban limited just to these tourist spots?
No, and this is quite significant. The court's directive also applies the ban to all wedding auditoriums, hotels, and restaurants across the entire state of Kerala.
Wow, statewide for those venues. That's broad.
Very broad. And it gets even broader. It will extend to official central and state government functions starting from October 2nd, 2025.
What prompted this? Was it a government initiative?
Interestingly, no. This came from the High Court itself, acting suo motu, meaning on its own initiative, without a specific case brought before it. Justices Baichu Kurian Thomas and Gopinath P. issued the directive.
So the judiciary taking a lead role in environmental protection.
Exactly. It shows the judiciary actively engaging in public welfare and environmental policy. And they didn't just ban plastic, they thought about the consequences. The court specifically ordered the government to set up sufficient water kiosks in these hilly tourist areas. The idea is to provide easy access to clean drinking water so people can refill reusable bottles.
That's crucial, isn't it? A ban is tough if there's no alternative.
Absolutely. The court mandated local government bodies and district administrations to oversee this, ensuring water is available at reasonable distances. It's about making the sustainable choice the convenient choice.
Who's responsible for actually enforcing this whole ban?
The court has tasked several key officials. The Chief Secretary, the Special Secretary for Local Self-Government, the Pollution Control Board, and the state police all need to coordinate enforcement.
It sounds like a really well-thought-out initiative. What are the potential implications? Could it be a model for elsewhere?
It certainly could be. Its comprehensiveness, banning items, extending the scope beyond just tourist spots, mandating alternatives like water kiosks, and involving multiple enforcement agencies makes it quite robust.
Are there potential downsides? Economic impacts.
There might be some initial adjustments needed for businesses, particularly small vendors in tourist areas. But the long-term benefit for environmental preservation and potentially enhancing Kerala's image as an ecotourism destination could outweigh that. The key will be effective enforcement and public buy-in.
It's a fascinating example of policy driving environmental change. Now let's move from the environment to healthcare, specifically transparency in West Bengal.
Yes, another significant policy move. The West Bengal Assembly just passed an amendment bill aimed squarely at making healthcare costs clearer and fairer for patients.
Healthcare costs always a major concern for people. What does this bill actually do?
It's called the Clinical Establishments, Registration, Regulation, and Transparency Amendment Bill 2025. Its core mandate is that all clinical establishments, hospitals, clinics, etc., must prominently display fixed rates and package charges.
Display them where?
In visible locations within the facility. So patients should be able to easily see the standard costs for common procedures or packages. No more hidden charges, ideally.
That's a big step. Does it go further?
It does. It also mandates digital record keeping. Hospitals are now required to maintain electronic medical records for every patient using government-approved software.
Digitization aiming for efficiency.
Efficiency, yes, but also potentially better tracking and management. And, critically, linked to the cost transparency, hospitals must provide proper estimates of all treatment charges before treatment begins, especially for anything not covered by those fixed rates or packages.
So trying to prevent that shock when the final bill arrives.
Exactly. The bill also emphasizes strict adherence to standardized charges for things like diagnostic tests, bed charges, and operation theater use. The aim is to prevent arbitrary pricing and overcharging.
Who pushed this bill through?
It was introduced by Chandrima Bhattacharya, the Minister of State for Health. It's framed as part of a wider government effort to regulate healthcare pricing, tackle overcharging, and make healthcare more affordable.
The goals seem clear: accountability and efficiency.
Yes. And the digitization aspect is key to that streamlining paperwork, reducing admin burden, hopefully leading to better overall healthcare management.
But will it work? Can hospitals find ways around it? That's always the concern with regulations like this.
That's the million-dollar question. Enforcement will be crucial. And there are implementation challenges, especially for smaller hospitals perhaps, in adopting new software and changing long-standing billing practices. The cost of compliance could be an issue.
Still, the principle seems sound more power and information for the patient. Could this spread to other states?
It's certainly possible. If it proves effective in West Bengal, it could inspire similar legislation elsewhere in India. There's a widespread feeling that greater transparency is needed in private healthcare costs. It's highly relevant for anyone who uses these services.
Definitely. Okay, from healthcare policy, let's look at the economy and a sector where India might be gaining an edge. Textiles.
Right. This is an interesting analysis looking at global supply chain dynamics. A report from Systematics Research suggests India's textile sector could be in a good position to benefit from some shifts happening with its main competitors.
Competitors like Vietnam and Bangladesh. What's happening there?
According to the report, rising labor costs in Vietnam and ongoing political instability in Bangladesh are making them potentially less attractive for global buyers. This creates an opening for India.
So external factors creating an advantage for India.
Exactly. It's not just those factors, though. The report also mentions generally improving global conditions helping India's long-term prospects, plus U.S. retailers getting their inventory levels back to normal after all the pandemic disruption.
What about the China factor? Tariffs.
That's still a big uncertainty. The potential for ongoing or new trade tariffs on Chinese goods pushes buyers towards that China plus one strategy, diversifying their sourcing away from relying solely on China. India is seen as a key part of that diversification.
But it's not all smooth sailing for Indian exporters, is it?
No, the report flags challenges too. Tariff uncertainties, even if they benefit India relative to China, can still compress profit margins for Indian companies. They might have to pass them on to consumers.
Meaning potentially higher prices for clothes and textiles in places like the U.S., which could dampen demand.
Potentially, yes. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And the financial performance reflects this mixed picture. Sector revenue was up 5% year-on-year, which sounds okay.
Why?
But EBITDA, a key measure of operational profitability, actually fell by 3%. And profit after tax only edged up by 3%. So margins seem tight despite higher sales.
Are all parts of the textile sector performing the same way?
No, there are definite variations. Spinning firms did relatively better, helped by lower cotton prices, which stabilized their margins. The garment sector saw a strong rebound. Sales volumes jumped 10% year-on-year, even 20% compared to the previous quarter, thanks to better global demand.
But some areas struggled.
Yes. Home textiles had a tough time. Sales declined 9% year-on-year, likely due to weaker market conditions in that specific segment. It really shows you need to look beneath the headline numbers for an industry.
So what's the overall outlook then? Can India capitalize?
The expectation is that steady cotton prices, maybe favorable currency exchange rates, and a focus on efficiency should help Indian firms stay profitable. India is definitely being viewed more and more as a viable alternative for global buyers.
A chance to become a preferred textile exporter.
That seems to be the potential, despite the challenges. But how long these specific advantages, like higher costs in Vietnam or instability in Bangladesh, will last is hard to say. Things can change quickly in global trade.
And India would need to keep investing in things like infrastructure and skills to really solidify that position, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Policy decisions and internal investments will be key to maximizing this opportunity. It's a fascinating look at how global economics, politics, and trade all intersect, right down to the products we buy.
Okay, we've covered policy, economy, diplomacy. Now let's turn to what we're calling society's mirror stories, reflecting crime, politics, and culture. And we start with a truly disturbing crime story from Meghalaya.
Yes, this is a particularly grim and tragic case. It involves the murder of a newlywed man, Raja Raghuvanshi, from Indore during his honeymoon in Meghalaya.
A honeymoon? How long had he been married?
Just 12 days. The murder happened on May 23rd, 2025. Absolutely heartbreaking timing.
And the circumstances, was it a robbery?
No, far more sinister. The investigation revealed it was orchestrated by his new wife, Sonam Raghuvanshi.
His wife?
Yes, in collaboration with a man alleged to be her lover, Raj Kushwaha, and 3 other accomplices they brought along, named as Akash Rajput, Vishal Singh Chauhan, and Anand Karmi.
This sounds incredibly premeditated. Where did it happen?
They chose a specific location. The Way Sadong falls in the East Khasi Hills district of Meghalaya. It was chosen deliberately for its isolation.
Had they been there before? Did they know the area?
Apparently not. None of the accused had ever even visited Meghalaya before, which makes the choice of such a remote spot even more chillingly calculated.
How did the actual crime unfold, according to the investigation?
The details are brutal. Sonam allegedly signaled the attackers. Vishal Singh Chauhan delivered the first blow with a machete. Anand Kurmi and Akash Rajput then joined the attack. 2 machetes were used.
And afterwards?
They dumped Raja's body into a gorge near the falls. Akash Rajput also threw his blood-stained shirt into the gorge. Sonam reportedly destroyed her phone later to try and obstruct the investigation. It was clearly premeditated.
How did the police piece this all together? It sounds complex, happening in such a remote area.
A special investigation team, SIT, was formed. They did a meticulous job. They actually reconstructed the crime scene with all the accused present, which helped confirm Sonam's confession and clarify exactly who did what.
What about evidence?
They gathered crucial forensic evidence, blood-stained clothing. One of the murder weapons was recovered. One is still missing. Plus, digital records and CCTV footage were vital in tracking the suspect's movements from Indore to Meghalaya and back.
And Sonam? Where was she caught?
She was apprehended later in Uttar Pradesh. Initially, she tried to claim she'd been abducted along with her husband, but police say she eventually surrendered and confessed her role.
So all 5 are now arrested.
Yes, all 5 accused are in custody. The investigation is still ongoing, particularly back in Indore, presumably looking into the motives and planning stages.
It's just a horrifying story. Beyond the personal tragedy, does something like this impact tourism's safety perceptions?
It can certainly raise concerns, especially about safety in more remote, although beautiful, tourist destinations. It's a stark reminder of the dark side of human nature, but also showcases the diligent work police do to solve complex crimes using both traditional methods and modern technology.
A grim story indeed. Let's shift now to the political arena, focusing on Bihar, where there are allegations of nepotism being leveled against the government.
Yes, this brings us into the thick of Indian state politics. RJD leader Tejashwi Yadav has been very vocal, ramping up his criticism of the ruling NDA government in Bihar.
What's his main accusation?
He's alleging widespread nepotism, that key positions are being awarded to relatives of alliance leaders rather than based on merit or qualifications.
Is he naming names or giving specific examples?
He's using some pretty sharp satire to make his point. He mockingly suggested forming a Jamai Ayog, a sons-in-law commission, and even a Jija Ayog, a brothers-in-law commission, to highlight the issue.
That's quite pointed. Is he targeting the chief minister directly?
Yes, he accused CM Nitish Kumar of essentially allowing officials under him to place their own relatives in influential posts, claiming this disregards merit.
And does his criticism extend beyond the state level?
It does. He also took aim at Prime Minister Narendra Modi, arguing that Modi is ignoring this alleged nepotism in Bihar, despite his own frequent public stance against family-based politics.
So, contrasting the PM's rhetoric with the alleged reality in an allied state government.
Precisely. Yadav pointed to instances where individuals who either lost elections or had finished their official terms were supposedly still being appointed as ministers, which he presented as clear evidence of favoritism over competence.
He's really trying to put the pressure on, especially regarding Modi's visits to Bihar.
Yes, he questioned why the PM, during his visits, tends to focus on attacking the opposition, while, in Yadav's view, overlooking irregularities within his own alliance, right there in Bihar.
Any other specific allegations?
He also threw in the idea of an RSS quota influencing government appointments, referring to the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and demanded more transparency about how ministers are actually selected.
And he tied this into other issues as well.
He did. He critiqued PM Modi receiving a recent civilian award from Cyprus, framing it as something that distracts from pressing domestic issues, like unemployment, poverty, and inflation back home.
Connecting international recognition to domestic problems, that's a common political tactic.
A very common tactic. He essentially condemned the government's efforts as being limited, mostly just distributing free rations and not tackling these deeper structural problems.
So this whole episode really taps into that long-running debate in India about nepotism versus meritocracy in politics, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's a constant theme. Yadav's using satire and direct accusations as a strategy to challenge the ruling coalition. It highlights that tension between leaders' stated ideals and the political realities, or alleged realities, on the ground.
How might this play out in Bihar? Could it impact upcoming elections?
It certainly could influence public opinion. These kinds of allegations, especially if they resonate with voters' own experiences or perceptions, can be potent political weapons. It puts the government on the defensive and raises broader questions about governance, transparency, and accountability.
It gives you a real flavor of the intensity of state-level politics in India. Okay, for our final headline, let's move from politics to culture and something with a truly global resonance, the International Day of Yoga.
Yes, a much more harmonious note to end on. India is preparing to celebrate the 11th International Day of Yoga, or IDY, coming up on June 21st.
And is there a specific theme this year?
There is. It's Yoga for One Earth, One Health, a theme that really emphasizes that sense of global unity and the connection between personal well-being and planetary health.
Who participates in this? Is it just an India thing?
Oh no, far from it. Millions participate across India. Of course, the sources mention events from Ladakh in the north to Kerala in the south, but it's very much a global event now, celebrated worldwide.
Where did yoga actually originate? We hear about it all the time, but what are its roots?
Its origins are incredibly ancient, traced back thousands of years to the Indus-Saraswati Valley civilization. There's archaeological evidence, like ancient seals showing figures in meditative postures.
So thousands of years old. And the word yoga itself.
It comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which literally means to unite or to join. This signifies the core philosophy, the integration or union of body, mind, and soul.
Was it always about physical postures like we often see today?
Not solely. The early traditions were deeply spiritual, focusing on a path to self-realization. Practices like pranayama or breath control and Surya Namaskara, the sun salutation sequence, were key parts, but embedded in a larger philosophical context.
When did it become more structured?
A major turning point was Maharshi Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, probably compiled around the 2nd century BCE. This text really formalized the philosophical foundations, outlining the famous eightfold path of Ashtanga Yoga.
Which covers more than just poses, right?
Yeah.
Ethics, meditation.
Much more. Ethics, self-discipline, postures, breath control, sense withdrawal, concentration, meditation, and finally, enlightenment or absorption. Then later, between roughly 700 and 1900 CE, we saw the emergence of Hatha Yoga, which placed more emphasis on the physical disciplines and postures many associate with yoga today.
How did it spread from India to become this global phenomenon?
Key figures were instrumental in introducing it to the West, particularly starting in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. People like Swami Vivekananda, who spoke famously at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, Ramana Maharshi, Paramahansa Yogananda, they brought these teachings to global audiences.
And the International Day of Yoga itself, how did that come about?
That's a much more recent development. It was Prime Minister Narendra Modi who proposed it at the United Nations General Assembly back in September 2014. He advocated for yoga's holistic health benefits.
And the UN agreed.
Yes, his proposal received overwhelming support, leading to the UN officially recognizing June 21st as the International Day of Yoga.
Why June 21st specifically?
It coincides with the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. Symbolically, this date is also traditionally revered as the day that Lord Shiva, considered the Adiyogi or the first yogi, is said to have begun teaching yoga to humanity.
So there's deep symbolism there.
Yeah.
And India continues to promote it actively.
Very actively. IDY has become a significant platform for India's cultural diplomacy, what's often called soft power. It's about sharing a cultural heritage that promotes well-being and harmony globally.
Does the globalization of yoga present any challenges? Maintaining authenticity, perhaps?
That's definitely a discussion point. As yoga becomes more popular and commercialized worldwide, there are debates about whether its deeper philosophical and spiritual roots sometimes get diluted. But IDY aims to highlight that holistic aspect.
It's really a celebration of an ancient practice with enduring relevance, isn't it? Connecting individual health with a broader sense of global well-being.
Precisely. It shows how cultural traditions can transcend borders and contribute positively to global health and harmony in the modern world.
What an incredible range of stories we've covered today, from the fierce passion surrounding cricket
to the incredibly careful tightrope walk of international diplomacy between Canada and India.
then diving into those really alarming tensions in the Middle East and seeing the practical steps India is taking to keep its citizens safe there.
And back within India, those significant policy changes, Kerala's push against plastics, West Bengal demanding more transparency in healthcare costs, real efforts to tackle domestic issues.
We also saw how global economic shifts are creating potential opportunities for India's textile industry, even while facing challenges.
And we confronted the darker side, too, with that tragic crime in Meghalaya, reminding us of the complexities of human behavior and the importance of justice.
Followed by the sharp political sparring in Bihar over nepotism allegations.
And ending on that uplifting note of International Day of Yoga, an ancient tradition finding new meaning on the global stage.
It really shows how pulling back the curtain on each headline reveals so much more depth, doesn't it? You start to see the connections.
Absolutely. You hopefully move beyond just knowing what happened to understanding the why and the potential so what, getting that richer, more nuanced view.
So here's something to maybe leave you thinking about. As we've journeyed through these headlines today, seeing India navigate this complex mix, ancient traditions meeting modern challenges, domestic growth alongside global influence, what does this incredibly dynamic picture tell us about the nature of progress and conflict and just plain connection in our world today?
It's a lot to chew on. Hopefully this deep dive is giving you some valuable context and insights.
We certainly hope so. Keep questioning, keep looking beyond the surface. Until next time, keep diving deep.